So hopefully now it's recording. Okay, recording is in progress. Okay, so we have the purpose just now, the steps, the 5 steps in writing a literature review, which is search for relevant literature, evaluate sources, identify themes, debates, and gaps, and outline the structure. Finally, write your literature review. So we just discussed about the first steps, which is search for relevant literature. So in this case, you must have your research problem and research question. So from your research problems and research questions, you can find the keywords to be used to do your literature review later on from the database. Okay, so once you have, which you will be doing it in the evening session. So once you have the papers, okay, so you already identify the keywords from your research problem and research questions. So you download all the relevant journal papers, okay. So now it's time for you to read the papers, reading journals for literature review. So you only read journals which are relevant to your research. So journals are collection of articles which focus on particular topics. So you will experience that some of the papers are mostly from one source, one or two relevant sources, similar sources from the same journal papers, for example. These articles are published periodically, such as 4 times a year, sometimes every month, sometimes for a year, quarterly, or sometimes only twice a year. So one common purpose of an article is to report on new research. Okay, so this is the purpose of the journal papers. And we as the researcher, initially, when we start embarking on this journey, so we want to know what is the new research, what is the new ideas that the researchers in our area are doing. Okay, so don't want it to be what we're proposing is the same. So that is sometimes the most critical part, especially towards the end, when you identify certain things that you want to innovate, for example, and then you already started it, and sometimes later you find it somebody else also doing it the same time, the same thing. So it will be very, very hard on that. So that's why you have to do a thorough literature review. Okay, so in order for you, now you have the paper, so you have you already please be organized. So try to put it in a proper folder for certain topics, for certain methods. So once you have that, you have to efficiently read the journals. Okay, so not only downloading the papers, because this is what we always do. We download the papers, we did not read it thoroughly. So by reading it thoroughly is actually to make you scholarly, a real researchers. Okay, so please read the journals papers. Okay, quickly decide if the articles is relevant for your literature, and then you understand the structure so that you can find specific kinds of information. But sometimes this is what usually happens also, especially for new researcher, especially for a new researcher, you only started your research 1 or 2 weeks or maybe 5 weeks. So you don't know what is actually this research is talking about. And sometimes you read, but you don't understand. That you try another paper, you read also, and you don't understand because you're not in the journey yet. But at least you try to capture the thinking of that researcher by skimming that papers. Okay, so to understand that, we have to look at the structure. So this the one that I'm sharing with you is actually the common structure of a journal paper. So I'm talking about journal, not the conference. Conference paper is a different thing. So hopefully you can find a journal paper instead of conference. Conference is also helpful if you want to know the latest, because sometimes as a researcher, you find something and you test something, and you proposing something, you're proposing a method, or you're proposing a mathematical model, and then you test it, and then you verify it, and then you, of course, you want to share, and you want to share the small part of your findings. So usually this is what people do at the conference. They share a little bit of your research, and then when you want to submit to journal, you have to expand it, maybe few modification of the model, and then few analysis, adding more analysis, adding more verification, and so forth. Okay, so that is a journal. And then you have to understand the section of the journal so that you know which part is you looking at. For example, if looking at the method, so where should you go? For example, if you are concentrating on the method, okay, so maybe for different applications, but sometimes different application, but the method is applicable to your research. So you only interested in the method, for example. So this is why you have to understand the section of the journal so you know where to look at. Okay, sometimes you understand the papers, but you don't understand the method at this particular time. And then later, after second or third semester, you decided to refer back to the methodology that this particular author's doing. So you go back. You don't have to read all of the papers, or you just concentrate on the methodology and how the researcher analyze it and then verify it, and then what are the performance measure, for example, that the authors do to verify that the proposal method is precise or accurate, and so forth. So usually in journals, of course, we have the title of the paper, and then authors and affiliation. So usually sometimes you need to contact with the authors. And if you are lucky, this author will respond to you, because I did it during my study. For example, at my validation parts, I already proposing a new model structure algorithm, for example, model structure method, and then I want to verify. So in system identification, we have a specific method to validate our whatever that we proposing. So I contacted this author to know details of what are the theory of that validation process. Okay, so I contacted him and this professor in Sheffield, and then he answered that. Okay, the same goes with my students. So he is doing, of course, also another mathematical modeling. And then sometimes when you are doing the mathematical models, you have some question in it. So my student, he contacted the authors, the very significant authors of that particular area, which is on the supply chain. And then that authors, and he is so lucky, this author, this particular author verify his mathematical model. So it saved him a lot. Okay, so with this, he attached the appendix. So no question asked, okay, because your mathematical model has been verified by someone who is very, very scholarly in that area. So that is also a lucky. And because like my case, the validation parts, I was actually questioned that validation during Viva. Okay, why are you doing blah, blah, blah? Because we have a 5 step, for example, 5 steps. And then he questioned me, one of the examiner questioned me about the equations. And I confidently can answer that because I contacted the particular persons. That must be my lucky day. Okay, so sometimes you need to contact the authors to get some information on that on that particular area. So don't be shy. Just write to them. Sometimes they are very, very helpful. Okay, so this also keywords also are needed, especially when you have the keywords, when new researchers like you want to find the journals that keywords will help them help the researcher to get to the papers. And then abstract. Okay, this is the most important part of your of the journals. This is the one that you shouldn't escape to read, the abstract, because The abstract is actually telling us everything. Okay, so telling us everything, telling us about the research, telling us about the research question, telling us about the methodology used, telling us about results, results, validation, and so forth. It's everything in a one short paragraph. So you have to understand. Sometimes you want to know whether it is relevant or not, the abstract will help you. Okay. And then you proceed with introductions. So introduction is also important because it is the development of the research. Because usually when I write or when all the research wrote about introduction, it will give the reader a sort of like overview of the research. So when we talk about solar energy, for example, so what are these? And then people has been doing the development, the people has been doing, and then uh, doing on modeling, for example, this and this they will list the references. So you basically know the trend, the development of your research based on these introductions, and then towards the end, the author will highlight about the gaps. Okay, the issues is gap, and that what are the things that they will fill in the gaps. So this is at the introduction section. Okay, the introduction outline the research context and question that the study will address. Okay, so you have ideas, what are the gaps that these researchers talking about, and what is the fields. And then literature review, basically on the relevant knowledge. Sometimes you need that to also to match with your literature review. Okay, and then methodology. Of course, methodology is methodology or research design outlines the theoretical framework, and then also the method use. Okay, the method use, the performance measure, the analysis used, the questions, the equations used, and so forth. And then results and findings. This is what you want to look at. Okay, what are the results? Okay, how usually results we must have a comparison with benchmark, comparison with previous method, for example, and the figures and tables helps to visualize your results. Okay, so we have ideas about the findings of the studies, and then discussion, and then finally conclusions. Okay, so the reference also help us to dig into relevant literature that we might be using. Okay, so these are the common section in journal. So what you want to do, you can go back later, but the most important part is abstract. Okay, which give you the idea whether you want to proceed with the paper or it is irrelevant. Okay, so search for literature using keywords and citations. Okay, when you start doing your literature review, now that your supervisor say, okay, for example, Amar, please do some literature review on this particular thing. So let us discuss in 2 weeks' times. Okay, or Fahmi, we want you to do some comparisons. Okay, in this particular area, please prepare, and then let us discuss in 3 weeks' time, for example. So this is the conversation that you have with your supervisors. So you create a list of keywords related to your research topic, just like I showed you just now. The research problems basically have three keywords. Just now, social media, the body image, or self-esteem, and generation Z. Okay? For example, these are the keywords. So you start that, read the abstract. Okay, so use the database to search journals and articles from UTM library catalog. Okay, we will learn more later. Read the abstract. So this is the first thing that, as I mentioned earlier, to find out whether article is relevant to your question. Identify the most important publication on your topic. Take notes of recurring citations. Because sometimes when you read a lot of literature review, you find that in your particular area, there is always, researchers always have a recurring citations. So please take a look at it. and how relevant to your research, take notes on that. And then you can also find how many times an article be cited on Google Scholar and Scopus. So meaning if you have a very high citation, meaning that this paper has always been referred to. Okay, so now that I have now that you have your problem statement just now. Okay, so from problem statement, I give you examples that we have 3 keywords, and now these are the section that you going to look into details. So I give you some example on my case. So my PhD is actually long time ago, but it is still relevant, I think, okay, so that you can take notes on that. Okay, this is my research problems. So I noticed some of you has done some research problems. Okay, so when you talk about research problems, you must have gaps and fields. Okay, we're going to learn that later, the class activity. Okay, so this is my research problems. I know some of you may not understand, so let us look together. In conventional identification problem, a model structure is selected based on its model representation consisting of full expansion of the equation. So the main point is a model structure. Okay, the parameter of this model are then estimated. So this is the next step. One, you have the model structure, you estimated the parameters. The parameter estimation methods used are normally based on least, mean square, or maximum likelihood estimate. So these are the most common method used. And then the parameter are estimated, how it is used, how does this steps and do the parameter estimations by optimizing the objective function based on gradient descent technique. So this is the techniques used in the most parameter estimation method. So you notice here, I followed with this method suffer some drawbacks, such as the solution may be trapped in local minima. Okay, so the gradient descent method, which is popularly used in least square method, have these problems. So therefore, yeah,
this is associated with the neural networks, like gradient descent.
yeah, gradient descent. Descent is actually the method. Yeah.
Or least mean square.
Yeah, what is going through? Okay, and then to cater this band or Billings chain and all that, apply OLS. Okay, so however, so I mentioned here, however, there are some disadvantages associated with this method, and therefore the study presents the need for developing alternative technique to enhance the proper structure selection method for better identification results. So you see here, we have some backgrounds. So what are the disadvantages? And then a little bit on what has been addressing, other researchers addressing to cater that local minima. However, there is still problems with what they're proposing, because this is actually quite new lah. Mao and Billings 1997, because my page is 2029. Okay, so this is the one that I'm based on, because Billings is actually the one doing OLS. So he's been doing 1989 and then up to 1997 and so forth. I'm following Billings, and Billings is actually my supervisors. Okay, so he is the one that I asked regarding the model validation techniques. And when I asked my supervisor that I want to ask Billings, can I email him? Because at that time, email is not so popular. Can I email him regarding this, because I need to further understand? My supervisor, you may get some sad news, because he is so super busy. Maybe he will not answer your emails, he said. But never mind, I said I'll give it a try, and suddenly he replied. So I'm really honored with him, because the one that he replied explained to me, helped me in my Viva. So please, If you have feelings that it will be helpful to you, why proceed. So in order for me to understand more on this particular area, because it is so new to me, because previously my area is on electrical engineering, and then I go to information technology in Warwick because we are doing a database system. Suddenly in PhD, I'm doing totally different things. System identification is very, very new, and then genetic algorithm and all that. Okay, so I start my journey because Billings proposing something similar, Mao and Billings in 1997 to cater the OLS. So he proposing something new also, the evolutionary algorithm. So I studied, first I have to understand this topic, model structure and parameter estimation. So I'm looking at it, model structure. So what are the things in model structure? We have linear, nonlinear, blah, 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 and so forth. So this is the structure on my literature review. I'm looking at all the, what are the previous researcher doing regarding model structure selection. And then another keyword is that the parameter estimation. So I'm doing parameters. So I understand what are the techniques used by other researchers on parameter estimation. This model validation is the technique to be used to validate my results. So I have to put it there because I have to give all the basis to show the reader that these are the methods that I use to validate whatever that I'm proposing. So that is why it is there. This is basically not the critical analysis, basically on the foundation, the justification of why you're using cross-validation, cross-correlation, statistical method. And then, so the structure selection, this is the main point, the structure selection, what are the current technology used? And then I'm proposing something new. I'm using genetic algorithms. So I must have a section on what people have been doing on genetic algorithm, particularly on this area, system identification. So I have one section of that. And then since I'm using GA, I also need to know what are the development or the adding additional features that other researchers have been doing in this area, so that either I can use that to justify, okay, or I can have that to add some, to modify on this algorithm as well. So these are the structure. So do you have the idea, class? From the problem statement, have the idea on what are the keywords, and then you structure your literature review. So this is what I want to share with you. So hopefully you get that. You may not come to it in the first semester, so later on, okay. So you must have in mind, you at the end, when you read your literature, how do you want to structure your literature so that you understand, the next researcher will understand, the examiner will also understand, will go through smoothly. If you have a very smooth, very structured literature review, the examiner will not take long to read your thesis. Because sometimes I have a very hard to understand what is actually the student is trying to tell me, because the structure, I don't understand the structure of the literature review that he or she wrote. So this is very, very important to get it straight on the literature review on the topic that you are into. Boleh semua? Wideh, Zulfa, faham
Boleh, Doktor.
Okay. Okay. So start with research problem. So please go back to your research problem. Ada tak benda tu? Ada tak, do you have the a little bit on what are development? Macam ni saya develop malam daripada least square pergi kepada OLS. And then kita we discuss on the gaps and then on the field. Okay, so step 2. Evaluate and select sources. What question or problem is the author addressing? So where can you find this one? Question or problem, class? Dekat section mana? In which section of your of the journal paper? Question or problem?
Tuan.
Yes, introduction, at the introduction, introduction section. What are the key concepts? How they are defined? Keyword. Okay. What are the key theories, models, and methods? This one. Methods. Methods di part 3 lah. Selalunya section 3. Selalu section 1, introduction. Section 2 is also, basically on the literature a little bit. Section 3, section 2, section 3 is usually the theories, the model, the methods. 4, result and discussion. 5, conclusion. Structure of the paper. Okay, you're saying something, Akil?
I just try to answer.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So what are the result and conclusions? So which part is this? Class? Result and conclusion section.
Conclusions, yes, of course.
How does the publication relate to the other literature? This one is at the reference. So reference usually, because reference, if you're using the reference method, the numbering, we can look when you go back to the reference list, you can understand the structure. So first, that the author is telling us about that particular theory, the foundation, okay, and then the development, and then the method, and so forth. How does the publication contribute to your understanding of the topic? What are its key insight and arguments? So this one are the one that you have to write it down. Okay, and then what are the strength and weakness? Also, you have to write it down. Okay, so synthesize all these findings. Okay, so important notes, keep track of the sources. You have to remember the citation. So usually what I did when I save the paper, year, name of the journal, and the title. So it will be easier for you to go back to that paper. Make an annotated bibliography, compile full citation information, and write a paragraph of summary, analyze for each source. So we're going to look at some example here. Okay, so this is the example of the paper when you download from PSZ. Okay, let's say I download this paper, computers, this is the name of the journal, Computers in Human Behavior. And this is the title, Too Much Face and Not Enough Book, the relationship between multiple indices of Facebook use and academic performance. So these are the journal. So when you want to refer to, this is the name of the journal, the volume is 28, the year is 2012, and this is the pages 187 to 198. Okay, so this is the title, and usually this is the affiliation. Somewhere they will show you the the email address, the contact address of the author that you can contact later on if you feel that you need some advice or some information from the author. So the abstract is the most important one, and then the keywords, and then the headings referring to the one that I mentioned earlier. So first page skimming will often help you decide if you should read further or it is not appropriate papers to your research. So this is the part, the abstract. The abstract, the title. Okay, so for example, let us look, is it the same? Yes, this is the abstract. So let us look how we want to find what information on this abstract, because earlier I said that by reading abstract is actually you have some ideas what is the paper is all about, what is the research is all about. Okay, so because the author here shared with us with different colors so that we can have some ideas on the abstract itself. So the first one is start with research focus. Research focus, what is the research focus, what is the problem, for example, that we want to look at, and then we some ideas on the past research, and then methodology, and then the findings that this author shared with us. Okay, so let us look. Because of social media platform widespread adoption by college students, there is a great deal of interest in how Facebook use is related to academic performance. Okay, so one or two, sometimes the author will add the problem statement one line, one sentence. So don't You don't have to, sometimes what is the current, usual mistake by student, they have so many sentences on the research background itself, but sometimes half of the abstract. So we don't need that. And then past research, a small number of prior studies have examined the relationship between Facebook use and college grade point average or GPA. However, these studies have been limited. So this is actually the gap by their measures, sampling design, failures to include prior academic abilities such as control variable. For instance, previous studies use non-continuous measure of time spent of Facebook and self-reported GPA. So this is the gap, the green one. So this is the technique that people use, but some has some disadvantage, for example. So you're proposing, you're filling in the gap. This paper fills the gap in the literature by using a large number, college students, blah, blah, blah. And then a little bit on results, finding. Hierarchical linear regression analysis revealed that time spent on Facebook was strongly and significantly negatively related to overall GPA, while only weakly related to time spent preparing for class. So sometimes in engineering, when we're having this finding, we usually, it will be good. Sometimes it is a must that you quantify. Okay, so if you say that it is significantly negatively related, put some numbers. So when you say that it is efficient, a little bit efficient from the previous method, put the numbers. So for engineering students, usually this part we quantify with some results, not only strongly or negatively, but with numbers. Okay, any questions so far? So this is how you scheme, scheming the literature review from abstract. Boleh? So ada gap di situ. This is the gap. And then this is the fields. Ada soalan ni, faham ke? Masih ada berada di sini ke? Kelas? Atif?
Tak ada soalan.
Ya, tak ada doktor.
Atif, okey Atif, faham?
Faham, Doktor.
Okay. Atif, siapa supervisor ya?
Dr. Azri.
Dr. Azri. So, orang-orang communication lah ni ya?
Betul.
Hanis?
Yes.
Hanis siapa? Daripada who?
Dr. Siti Zura.
Siti Zura. So basically on biomedical.
Yes.
Okay. So most of you are first semester kan? Right?
Yep, doktor,
Yep.
first semester.
Okay, so reading journal. So we already look at the journal just now, the abstract. So now you have some ideas when you read abstract. Okay, hopefully. So actually abstract help reader to decide. Just like I mentioned, whether match ke tidak dengan kita punya lah. So scanning, use section heads to find the information needed. Sometimes you don't need the whole thesis to look into. Sometimes you're only interested on the methodology. Sometimes you're only interested on the section on results. Okay, so scan. This is the use of scanning once you understand the structure of the journal. Top and tail readings. This is also help when you have so much of the information. Now that you download, nanti bila petang ni sekarang, download lah banyak-banyak sangat. Rasa ni relevant, download. And this find relevant, you look at the topic and this is one, this is relevant, and then you download. So you have so many papers. So sometimes top and tail reading is really helpful to identify whether this one really suit you. Okay, top and tail readings, read the introduction and conclusion to get some ideas. Introduction, why? Because introduction is actually leading us to the research development. Kan daripada mula dengan OLS, mula dengan least square, and then OLS, and then all this evolutionary computation, but there are problems, blah 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 blah, and then gaps. Nanti the introduction also have gaps and fields, and then conclusion of course it helps bila kita baca conclusion, dia akan reiterate again and what is actually the researcher doing, and then some results, conclusion. So conclusion, the results, how does the one that you're proposing is good enough and so forth. So top and tail reading is good. When we have so much, kita dah download banyak sangat ni. We download so many papers. Which one is actually really we need to concentrate on? So top and tail reading is very good. Okay. Besides abstract mesti kena baca. Abstract mesti kena baca. Top and tails. It helps you. Okay. So once you have, you put it together. So these are the papers. Sometimes like I shared with you my graph just now, my table just now. Bukan table lah. The figures just now, how I organize my literature based on the topics. Okay. So now sometimes we have subsection on your literature review. So you want to do some comparisons. So you do, we call it reading grid to organize literature review. So for example, this author share with us. So you put source information on the first row. Sometimes you just put the main author and the year. Okay, sometimes you put a little bit on the short form of the journal. For example, the one that you popularly use, RSER, Renewable Energy and Sustainable Review, for example. And then what else? REE Access. So sometimes source of information, you put authors, put year and journals. It will be also helpful. The second row is the research topic or questions. Okay, so where did you find the research question again, class? Kat mana kita jumpa research question? Section 1. Okay, so you put it there. So okay, section 1, Junko punya, dia kata relationship between time on various FB activity and GPA. So the same goes with the other researchers. Non-academic FB used back for GPA. Their differences, or these are the research topics. So put it back into your tables. And then the third row is methodology. So what are the methods that all these researchers use to measure the relationship just now? So like Junko, he used surveys quant, USA, blah, 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 and all that. Okay. And then what are the findings, the results basically? Right? The result basically from this researcher. So these are the results. So the back for academic, blah, 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 and all that. And then limitations. Okay. So the author will address the limitation. Okay, the findings, this is for social science. For us, engineering, please have numbers. Okay, please quantify your results here. Not just something like this. You have to have numbers. And then maybe efficiency 0.009, maybe the regression 1.00, something like that. Okay. And then areas for future, because at the end, the conclusion section, some authors have recommendations. So you put it there. Okay. So when you analyze, what you can see here, there are some trend, or they call it recurring theme. Okay, so what we can say here is that on the finding on the row 1, 2, 3, 4, row 4, most of the researcher find it FB bad for academic performance, negative relationship, and so forth. Then the limitation, these are the limitation. Mostly, most of the authors focus on GPA, something like that. Then these are the area of research. So you can have ideas on that. Okay, from all this literature review, you structure, okay, most of them are doing about the same thing. Okay, so from this you can identify the gap. Okay. Any questions so far for section 2? Okay, we move to yeah. Ya, Muhyiddin? Muhyiddin. Tak ada?
Yes, saya Muhyiddin.
Ada
macam like your example for grid example for grid tu. So normally we categorize it using our keywords ke, atau macam let's say we have a few keywords and then kita segregate it between dia punya grid tu according to keywords, or kita boleh mix semua?
Kadang-kadang mix, but kadang-kadang we still in the dark sometimes. But then later on dia akan improve, dia akan based on topic. Mula-mula ni kadang-kadang kita very general and then we put everything so that our list will be very long at the beginning. Never mind, you try it first, but then as you go through the process after second semester, third semester, you can have that based on topic. Based on section, just like the one that I showed you for my case. Okay, mula-mula memang saya buat semua everything on the one grid, and then later on, okay, actually these people are actually concentrate on model structure. These people actually concentrate on parameter estimation. So later on, it will help you to compartmentalize it based on topics. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, we proceed with step 3. Identify themes, debates, and gaps. So this is the most important one. This is the basic question that you will be asked for your first year assessment. Okay, when you do your proposal defense, second semester for master student, third semester for PhD student, we really look into this one. Ada gap ke? Is there a gap? Or you just do for the sake of doing? No, we don't want that. Okay, so this is step identifying debates and gaps, understand the connection, relationship between the source. So usually we put it based on trend, based on themes. So depends on your research. So I cannot go to specific because I don't quite understand your trend lah, because semua ni kita various. And then find conflicts and so forth. Okay, this is the gaps, weakness that need to be addressed. This one you have to understand that this is the one that you can get it for you. Kalau paper orang kita boleh tengok paper orang kan, but for you, for yourself, this is experience learning through the process when you have gone through all those literature. That is why literature review is important. So once mula-mula kita memang tak nampak gap, apa gap ya, okay. But then as we go through reading, we manage to do our own gaps. Okay, so now we're looking at how people do the gaps. Okay, why addressing research gaps? Because this is the part 2 where you comes in. You as the new researcher, you comes in, so that's why you really have to understand the research gap. Attempt to fill in some piece of information missing in the scientific literature. It is not a major breakthrough. No, tapi small, sometimes modified a little bit. Okay, so this is actually gap. By modifying a little bit, you can increase the efficiency. You can increase the time taken, for example. Okay, so you make it better, for example. Okay, so otherwise it is not novel research and is therefore not contributing to the overall goals of science. So this is the purpose you are here. This is a purpose you come to UTM registering as the research student, master or PhD, because you want to contribute something to the knowledge. Okay. So if we cannot find that, so sorry to say, okay? So you have to do it again sometimes. So identify gap. A gap statement is found in introduction section of a journal article or in the goals and important section of a research proposal. So kalau research proposal tu dia dekat important section of goals, in journals usually at the introduction, just like what we discussed earlier, right? So let us look how people address gaps, so that we have some ideas to help us to prepare the gap while doing our PERSI assessment later, right? Okay. So phrases that might help you identify or form a gap statement, things like this lah, has not been studied or reported, so blah 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 is required or needed. the key question remains, it is important to address. So this is some words that you can identify. What concept are the authors trying to better understand? So this is what we call gap. And then once you understand the gap, okay, you manage to write the gap. So this is you have to fill the gaps. So fill the gap ni lah why you come in. Once the gap has been identified, tell audience how you attempt to at least somewhat address in your project. Okay, a new paragraph or sometimes one statement on how the gap to be accomplished. Therefore, the purpose of the study is to determine the effect of lead and hypobiliary system, especially on liver and on the gallbladder. Dia tak cakap lagi apa method dia, tetapi the need that you, it doesn't say how yet, what are the theory or what are the method, but the purpose of the study is, so this is why you come in. In journal paper, the first sentence of the last paragraph in a paper, introduction. Okay, so the introduction section just now, last two usually where the research is coming. Okay, so this is why we here. This is why I'm writing this paper. Okay, this is why I'm doing this research. So this is the gap. So you must have this. You must have gap. You must have fields. This thing, gap, field. Barulah you punya proposal. Okay, so bila literature review, proposal defense, kita tengok ni lah, gap dengan fields, gap and fields. How do you get that gaps and fields? Through your literature review. So that's why in proposal defense, the three most important part, introduction, literature review, and methodology are the one that you have to submit it. You have to submit for your proposal defense, because from the literature review, we know that you understand the gap and the field, and then from methodology, you know that you have you already identify the method so that you are ready to start your proposal, your research. Okay. Okay. So some phrases to indicate the field. We therefore analyze. In this study, we investigated. The goals of the study in this paper we report. So this is basically the field. For example, like my case. However, there are some disadvantages, and therefore, the study presents the need for developing alternative technique to enhance the proposed model structure method for better identification solutions. So this is how I put the gap and the fields together. So now, understand that? Hopefully you can do your gaps and fields. Okay. So let us look class this paper. Okay. Tell me where is the gap and the fields. So baca dulu. Read. Okay, which one is the gap?
Whether all the chemicals which are now.
Yeah, this one, all those. Okay, so particularly lah, the question of whether all the chemicals which are now currently proposed in literature as purifying, suspending, or grafting agent for SWNTs actually have limited effect on the SWNT integrity has to be addressed. So what about the fields? Lastly, in this paper, we report, okay, this one. Okay, so the underline is the gap. This one is the gap. And the italic is the field. So clear kan? So it is very clear. Okay, so this is the gap. And this is what the paper is all about. Okay. Or the research or the study. The study is trying to investigate and then report. Very dry. Okay, let us go another example. Okay. Very clear? Where is the gap? Class?
Practical application of this model is limited because of the complex numerical.
Sure, okay. And then the fields? The last, the purpose of the paper. Okay, so however, the practical application is limited because of the complex numerical solutions required. So the purpose, blah, 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 is the final one. Okay, so information concerning both the potential for exposure to a given material and its potential effects such as toxicity or mutagenicity. So this is all needed. And then this will address the risk issue. Okay. Class exercise. This one I leave it at the end of if you look at my research plan just now, so I leave it at the end. So you find 3 to 4 primary research articles, not a review paper. So a review paper to the review. So primary meaning the one that really close to your research from reputable journals in your field. So for this part, just do like the one I shared earlier slide lah. Underline the gap, not circle, but then maybe underline gap just now kita italic, italic the field. Underline the gap, italic the field. Okay, so tips, usually it is at the introduction section of the paper. Exercise. I finish it a little bit for this one. Not breakdown. Okay, never mind. Go to step 4. Sebab step 5 pun banyak juga. Okay, step 4 is on outline your literature structure. So you already have your literature review, and then you want to write it up. So first you have to outline lah. Outline one way just now kita do the synthesizing tadi, and then okay, so there are various approach. Sometimes macam tadi Widin tanya kan macam mana nak kita structure or we do our research. So there are various approaches. Some do it chronologically, so meaning looking at time, and some are using theme, based on theme, and some clustering it using methodology. So it depends on how, and also theoretical framework, foundation. So in order to outline the literature structure, usually for my student, I encourage them to use this technique, which I think it is very good. So you may have your way of doing your literature, you structuring your literature, but this is the one that I really find it very good. The first time I encounter how the student did it when I'm appointed as an examiner for this particular student at the University South, okay, southern part of Malaysia. And then since the student is she doing it this way, I can go through the story very nicely, I really understand what she did based on this structure. And then when I look through, the technique that she used is what we call K-chart. Yeah, this is the K-chart. And it is actually proposed by, I have the reference, Prof. Kazani, but he already beat the creator, meninggal dah, I think 2-3 years back. So, but I think the technique that he proposed is very useful, and if you use that, please mention the name, how he contributed to this one. Okay, so let us look at this K-chart. So this is example. Okay, so we have the general topic because we haven't identified title. The title of your research usually will be decided at the back of your study, at the end of your study after Viva. So the examiner will help you to actually find a suitable title for you. So your title keep on changing later on, and as you go through your journey, sometimes change this title, sometimes this title. So it all depends on towards the end. But then at least you have some general topics, the one that you shared at the e-learning. Yeah. So this is the study of the performance of ABC. So the system is actually on ABC. So like my case is model structure, system identification. So, and then from this ABC or renewable energy or solar PV, something like that. So from this system, there are, we call it sub-issues, okay? Sub-issues may be on types. Then another sub-issue may be on applications. So maybe you can go through to 3 or 4 sub-issues. It's okay, okay? So because you're doing literature, so there are so many possibilities. Okay, so there are 1, 2, or 3 types. So maybe you only concentrate, let's say for example, renewable energy. So we have solar, we have wind, we have what else? Piezoelectric and so forth. Okay, so we concentrate on solar maybe. Then sub-issue number 2, maybe we only concentrate on isolated island, or maybe we concentrate on northern, Mediterranean part of the world, something like that. So this the application, the green highlighter is the one that you concentrate on. And then we have the the renewable energy system. We have the subsystem element, maybe on the storage, for example. So A, B, C, and then sub element of that subsystem. Okay, so this is the overall ideas of how you concentrate on putting your literature review in a writing. Okay, so once you have this, you'll be more focused. Okay, so sometimes it's not that we did not look at it at all on this type 1, but maybe we read a little bit so that we understand. Also type 3, we read. It's not that we did not read, so that we can do comparison, maybe. Okay, so these are the ideas. And then sometimes we can proceed into methodology as well. Okay, once you identify the area here. So in this particularly, let's say piezoelectric fan. So one of my students is doing piezoelectric fan for, and then a plus with magnet. So how to do the research, the methodology. So there are various techniques: theory, experimental, simulation, or survey. So maybe I decided I want to concentrate on experimental only. Okay, so when I want to concentrate on the experimental only, so what are the performance parameters or the design parameters that I want to play with? I want to deal with. Okay, I want to modify. Okay, I want to look at the factors, performance parameters, and then design. Sorry, this one is the design. Maybe the length, the diameter, the material. So these are the design parameters. The performance parameter, maybe the speed, the efficiency, and so forth. So when you have this one structure in this part, so you're already clear what you're doing. So this is one method. So if you have another method, it's okay. So this is just, I would like to share one of the methods. For example, okay, I share with you, this is my student, PhD student, graduated 2020. And her title is on optimization of multiple piezoelectric magnet fans for electric cooling system. So the system that she concentrates is on electronic cooling. Okay, the thing that she do is piezo and magnet fans. And then she has optimization as well. Okay, so this is actually the, I can't remember, maybe this is the abstract of a paper, or I can't remember this one. Okay, but this is how she structure her literature review. So when we talk about electronic cooling, so we have passive method and active method. So she concentrate only on active method. So in active method, either you use liquid coolant or gaseous coolant, and she also concentrate on, she's not interested in liquid. So another student of mine doing comparing between different liquid coolant. So this is another research. So this one is on gaseous coolant. So where we have either air or this one, and then she concentrate on air, and then solid wall is moved periodically, and then she looks at piezo solution of high amplitude vibratory motions, and then either standalone or integration. So she decided to integrate with magnets, and then magnets we have either single piezo or multi piezo, and the orientation is either linear or radial. So she could see, she looks into both. Okay, so once she decided on this area, so this is the methodology. So she decided to do both experiment and simulation. Okay, so experiment should do all the prototypes, and the design is using DOE, and then the simulation is looking at the mathematical model and numerical, and then we compare that. So these are the control variables. Okay, so these are the independent variables and dependent variables. So the one that we look at is the magnet size, materials, and fan dimension, and so forth here. Okay, so the performance measure, basically the one that we look into is this one, heat transfer coefficient, performance measure, fan amplitude, air velocity, Reynolds number, and so forth. Okay, so this is the key chart of one of my students. Okay, so maybe you don't need the key chart, but then you have some ideas how to structure your literature, another one. So for example, this is a title, a bi-objective optimization for a green GIT distribution model. This is actually on green's supply chain. And this student of mine also doing supply chain, and then he added a green words here, meaning green. We take into consideration how much carbon dioxide is being exposed on the supply chain and so forth. So these are the things that he focused on: green supply chain network optimization, GIT logistics optimization, and modeling and optimization technique supply chain. Okay, so that is basically on the how you structure your literature review. Because once you structure, so your mind will be focused on what are the topics that you really need to concentrate on, based on the keywords, based on the research problem just now. Okay, I think we have a 15-minute breaks. We continue at 11 for a bio break and a short break. Maybe some of you have not your breakfast yet and so forth. Is it okay? Ke lama sangat? Maybe 10:55. Is it okay, Tuan?
Okay.
Okay. So we meet again 10:55. Okay.
My daughter.
Okay.